Okay, here's Manus.
Thank you guys. Again, like Steve said, feel free to untangle this. There we go. Yeah, feel free to come on up. We will be taking questions, but there's a website you can go to. It's on the wall, mHUB.cnf.io. There we can aggregate all the questions and then essentially ask you or make sure everyone's questions get answered. Come on in, guys, in the back. All right, well, welcome to mHUB. We're really happy with the turnout. We've got blockchain and artificial intelligence going on in the other room. Here we'll be talking about spurring investment in product and manufacturing businesses. So before we get to the panelists here, I want to introduce Alexi and Todd to talk about SIA.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Hi, I'm Alexei Miladinov. That's Todd Krushank, bashfully sitting in the front there. We are the CEO and COO of Surgical Innovation Associates, and we're headquartered, thank you, we're headquartered right here at mHUB. Now, what we do is develop and commercialize for-surgeon, by-surgeon innovation in plastic and reconstructive surgery. The company was initially started almost exactly 2 years ago in order to develop a piece of IP invented by a key opinion leader in breast reconstruction just down the road at Northwestern. Now, breast reconstruction carries extremely well-validated and robust psychological benefits to women who have undergone the emotional trauma of a mastectomy. And that technology, our first product, provides an absorbable surgical scaffold, kind of an internal bra, if you will, to make those procedures safer, more cost-effective, faster, and less painful for the patients undergoing the reconstructive journey. Now, since starting the company 2 years ago, we've raised 2 rounds of funding and are right now in the midst of a Series A. We've taken that patent, that idea from the pages of that patent, developed it into a final product, built around us a team of key opinion leading clinical advisors, and taken that product through the testing to support FDA submission later this month or early next month. But along the way, in developing this clinical expertise around us, and developing an advisory board of commercial and regulatory experts in plastic and reconstructive surgery, and developing expertise with regard to the product itself, we found that the same technology and the same network could be leveraged in order to develop our pipeline device, which reappropriates that kind of mesh scaffold technology and some cutting-edge stent and laparoscopic technology in order to provide a minimally invasive cosmetic lift procedures, if you think about facelifts, neck lifts, things like that, to patients who don't want to undergo a full open procedure, or to practitioners who are not trained in performing those full open procedures. And that's what really brought us to mHUB. We don't have the engineering expertise to tackle the kind of hard manufacturing and mechanical engineering aspects of that device. Well, what really brought us to mHUB initially was their stellar prospective member outreach team and emails. But what kept us here was the combination of the human capital that we found to fill the gaps in our own expertise, and obviously the capital equipment that has supported rapid prototyping to help us already have achieved 2 cadaver studies on this new device and be in the midst of finalizing that introducer mechanism for that technology. And I think that's a recurring theme that you'll hear throughout this whole day, is that there's a unique marriage here of diverse intellectual capital and the actual machinery in order to reduce innovation to practice that makes this place unique. So thank you.
Thank you. Your email is somewhere if people are interested, they want to get in touch with you. How do they reach you?
You can walk over to Surgical Innovation Associates office during lunch and say hi, or it's Alexei, A-L-E-X-E-I, at Surgical Innovation Associates. Long, but easy to spell.
Great. All right. Give them another round of applause. Somebody trying to do something hard. Good. Do you want us to just kick off and we're just going to introduce each other? Or will you play? Okay. Let me quickly introduce myself, but I'm the least significant here. I'm just going to try to keep people from coming to blows. My name is Steve Koch. I was present at the creation of mHUB. And this is an idea that I think many of you know germinated for a while and came out of a need for place that was going to be a center of excellence and a center of innovation and manufacturing. I had the opportunity to do that while I was serving as deputy mayor of Chicago, and now have the pleasure of serving on mHUB's board. And with that, more importantly, everybody want to just take a minute to introduce themselves, where they come from, and sort of their connection to the world of financing innovation.
Sure. So I'm Troy Henikoff. So as an entrepreneur first for many years, actually one of my very first customers is sitting back there, Bill Houston. Was it 1987? Something like that, doing software development. But was an entrepreneur for many years, built a bunch of companies, and then decided I enjoyed helping other entrepreneurs more, and so got very involved in first angel investing, launched a fund called Firestarter Fund here in Chicago, started Accelerate Labs, which became Techstars Chicago, and then 3.5 years ago launched Math Venture Partners. So I have, around the investing circles, I've been the entrepreneur raising money, raised friends and family, angel, and venture capital, as well as participated on the other side as friends and family, angel, and venture capital. The one caveat is I haven't done a lot around hardware. My undergraduate degree was mechanical engineering, but I've spent most of my time with software.
I'm Yeung. I'm the VP of Molex Ventures. Hopefully for those of you guys who know Molex name, hopefully that response is really good, high-quality connectors. But we are hoping to branch out from the connector name, so hence investing in a lot of adjacency and far-out areas in medical, automotive, and industrial space. We've been doing this since 2012, and then Molex Ventures was officially established actually early January 2017, but we didn't really quite announce it until the end of the year 2017. But I'm actually very happy to see a lot of familiar faces here, including our portfolio company that's also on the panel as well.
So I'm Jacob Babcok, CEO and founder of NuCurrent, and NuCurrent is a portfolio company of Molex Ventures. They invested in our Series A round in 2014, and we've raised Series B round and alternative financing in addition to some angel rounds. And we're a wireless power company that makes electronics and hardware, electromechanical assemblies that go into other businesses' products, for example, like into an iPhone where you have an antenna, you have some circuitry in there. We make those antennas and circuits that go into their phones so you can charge them without plugging them in.
I'm Kerr. I'm Executive Managing Director at GE Ventures. We're the corporate venture capital group for General Electric, so we're investing in things that are strategic to GE. GE's involved in the healthcare, power, broadly speaking, and aviation and other industrial areas. We are investing in hardware and software. We've got about 100 companies in the portfolio.
So this should be interesting because I didn't do this, but Maras and others assembled this panel, and if you think about it, we have people who come at both investing from what I think will be slightly different viewpoints and might be of interest to all of you as to how people think about that, and then a youngish company that's sort of gone through this process and understands a little bit of the difference from the standpoint of a capital user. So maybe the way to start, Karen, you could kick us off if you don't mind, on sort of how the distinctions of how GE in particular, but a corporate venture investor thinks about things and how you view the world and what's useful for people to understand about your frame of reference, and then in juxtaposition perhaps to Troy representing the independent fund world.
Yeah, well, I just start off in my introduction saying that we're strategic investors and we're trying to invest in things that are strategic to GE. Now, the definition of strategic sometimes requires some creativity on our part. And there's always, I think, a tension in corporate venture as to how close you're investing to the current core areas of the business. And for us, I think what we're trying to do is invest a little bit ahead of the businesses, maybe 3 to 5 years out. While the businesses are focused on making their quarters, we can think about innovations that can help them in a 3 to 5 year time frame. And we can also think about things that can disrupt them as well. So for us, we bring a mindset, because most of the teams are led by people who came from financial venture investing groups. So we're also not here to make a return. That's how we keep our jobs, by making money as well. But although the return is not as important to GE, if you think about it, like $120 billion business, if I make a couple $100 million on a company, so what?
I think somebody would think that's a so what.
Well, no, $100 million is probably
Somebody
a penny in
famously once said
EPS.
$1 billion here, $1 billion there, almost said it's real money.
It's a penny in EPS. But as I said earlier, we're trying to think about innovation and how we can help in innovation in the future. So for companies, our mindset is obviously we're looking for great entrepreneurs, because at the end of the day, if the entrepreneur isn't if the team isn't good, the company won't be successful, and it won't be useful to us as a partner.
Right.
We are looking for opportunities where we can partner with the companies, maybe help them build technology, maybe help them go to market, and that type of thing. We spend a lot of time just understanding the technologies too, because we're definitely, an engineering shop, so we spend a lot of time there, and differentiated technology is important to us.
Maybe it's useful just to get sort of a little more granular for a minute. So when you approach something, Troy's got a group of partners who are investors, probably some people who work for you who think through from. Do you say partner with a business? Does a business unit of GE have to be a partner with you in thinking about an investment? Do you bring in engineering talent or product expertise from a business unit, or is GE Venture sort of operating more similar, might be in the GE framework, and your targets are identified based on GE's businesses, but you're more like Troy?
Probably more like Troy. So we have, in order to make an investment, the companies don't have to have a business relationship with GE a priori before we make the investment. Because that can take a long time.
Yeah, right.
And if you're trying to do venture deals happen at a more rapid pace. So we've evolved a process where we certainly socialize an opportunity with the relevant business unit. The business units are represented on the investment committee, but they're only 1 out of 5 votes. So we can carry the day without the business unit. But for the most part, I think many of them are interested in watching these companies. So very rarely do they vote against the opportunity, particularly since they're not the ones, the money.
They don't own it, yeah.
The money's not coming from their budget, so they don't.
They don't get fired if it screws up.
Exactly. We leverage our Global Research Center to help us on technical due diligence. However, if it's going to be something super close to what they're already working on, I will go to an outside group if I need technical diligence, because I don't want to create those conflicts.
Right. Lily, is Molex, does that resonate with you? Is that sort of same approach, a little different? You guys are probably newer, if you're in the last 5 or 6 years, to venture investing. GE's been at this for a long time.
So I would say we have 2 modes of investment. I would say one is what we call strategic. So the division kind of already have a feel of where they wanted to go after, and that is probably beyond 5 years, but they have a pretty clear picture what they wanted to participate in. And those are typically larger investments, and we want to have heavier influence or a heavier relationship or partnership with the startup, and those we do need a division sponsorship. But there is a different type, which is what we call the transformative investment. It is more of what we view as disruptive to our industry as an overall. It does not require a business sponsorship. However, the investment amount is typically smaller, and it's more of a learning and early participation into a trend, and maybe to see how we can evolve with the trend or participate in shaping the trend. That's more of that learning that we get, and hopefully some point in time, it becomes a strategic investment over time. But yeah, I would say the first type, definitely, you need heavy sponsorship from the business.
So sort of running the gamut or on the spectrum with really probably the most business connected to a unit of Molex, G probably in the middle. I take it you don't have those constraints, is it? Tell me about.
We don't have those constraints at Math, and we focus on customer acquisition. We believe that companies that have an unfair advantage in customer acquisition are going to win in the long run. What I tell entrepreneurs is if you can acquire and retain customers, I can fix anything else in your business. Customers are the hardest thing, and prove that. But we sometimes come to the same conclusions. So GE and Math both invested in Apervita, a company that we're co-invested in. We got to that conclusion differently. Apervita sells into hospitals, GE is in hospitals. We actually thought that GE's participation in that round was going to give them a competitive advantage in selling into hospitals because of their partnership and what they were planning on doing with it. So we end up coming to the same conclusion many times, but from a different perspective. So just to be clear, while these guys were both corporate ventures, so they're typically funded by that corporation, for a variety of reasons, as they said, we have limited partners. Think of venture as a mutual fund that you can invest in that only invests in a specific segment, and in our case, that specific segment is early stage digital technology. So the only reason we exist is to give them a return, and we get evaluated strictly on giving them a return and how big that return is. And if we do a good job, they'll invest more with us the next time. So our mission is very clear to our LPs, and the way we do that is by helping the entrepreneurs grow their company, and we spend a lot of time with them helping them grow because we're aligned. We both are successful if they grow and have a nice exit.
How much do the three of you find when you go to want to invest that the entrepreneur's sense of how much you can help them is what's driving it above and beyond money? Because at some point you get into an environment, particularly I suppose in the hotter, more attractive, half these companies out here are in the position of lots of people want to give them money. They're throwing money at them. It might be useful or instructive just for each to understand sort of your core, what you would say is your biggest value add, or what they should be looking for, either yours or what you think somebody should look for as the biggest value add from an investor. Because it might be a little different as amongst the three of you.
So as an entrepreneur, I'll put my entrepreneur's hat on, who you raise money from is critical to the success of your business. And in an ideal world, you will have lots of people and you can choose and you'll be able to prioritize. The harsh reality is that many, many, many times the entrepreneurs are struggling, don't have that choice, and will end up taking money from whomever they can get it because they need it to survive, right? It's sort of Maslow's hierarchy. So, humans can only go without oxygen for about 2 minutes. Well, a company can only go without cash for about 2 minutes and they're dead. And so if you're in that position where that's what you need, you don't have a choice. If you're in the fortunate position of being able to select, I think trust is the number one thing. You have to be partners with someone that you implicitly trust. When you're trying to cover for that by having fancy contracts and lots of detail, there's an inherent flaw in your relationship, and this is a relationship that goes on until the company ends typically. It is very hard to get out of an investing role. It's easier to get out of a marriage than it is to get out of a venture investment. I'm serious, right? And so you have to have partners that you trust implicitly, and then you have to have partners then the next step would be in this hierarchy would be who can add the most value. And when I think about that, there isn't one thing I'm looking for, but I think about it like a football team. If I'm going to have a football team, I need someone who can pass, someone who can kick, someone who can block, someone who can run, right? I need all of those different skills. Hopefully, as the entrepreneur, I bring some of those skills to the table, but I can't be the quarterback and the receiver. I can't play all those roles. And so what I look for is people who fill gaps in my skill set, both in my investor set and in my board of directors. And those two overlap a lot. And so I'm looking to fill that out and have a football team that actually has a good running game and a good passing game and a good defense in an ideal setting. And if you can satisfy those three things, you can get money from people you trust with skills that complement you, oof, are you in a good spot.
Yeah, so money is, I think that's right. Money is a commodity, right? So everybody's money, well, is green. And so you're looking for folks who can add value. I think when people come to a GE or really maybe most corporates, they believe that those corporates can help them add value either through product development or introductions into certain industries or markets and the like. For us at GE's Venture Group, we're trying to add value by helping the companies navigate GE if they want a relationship with GE. But we're also really focused on helping them build their teams and their companies. And I think great venture capitalists do that, right? They open up their networks to the companies, help them find the engineer or the marketing and sales leader and the like, and we're doing that too. But a lot of the value that we do provide, in addition to the capital, is opening up GE to the company. On our side, we can help them think through manufacturing, supply chain. We can help them with hospital relationships. We can help them with utilities if they're selling into those industries. So that's a lot of what we do.
Yeah, I would resonate. I think it comes down to people. We've seen a lot of companies that they have solid business plan, really good model, really good technology. However, we definitely seen kind of like the team is where it breaks down, and that's, I've had 2 investments that I had to walk away from because you just either can't establish that trust or you don't think the team is the right people that can really bring it to the success. Then the next thing we look at is the investment board that is currently on there. What value are they bringing? Are they able to supplement for the gap? And does a company really have that self-awareness that where are they weak at? Because I know most entrepreneurs will say, I can do anything, I can do everything and anything. I get that, but I think you have to have a self-awareness of, are you the best person to really do this portion of your business, or are you better off to leverage somebody else who have a comparative advantage to really do this better than you, easier than you, faster than you? And I think that's the value we're looking for in a company, is that I think our value to them is somewhat fixed. It's capital, it's manufacturing capacity, it's design services, it is that bridge or introduction to the OEMs that they could do business with. But they have to realize what matters to them the most. What do we bring that are most valuable to them?
All right, so Jacob, I put you on the spot. Sure. You got an investor here. Ignore that, please. So above and beyond you needed money, there was some moment where you said, I'm ready. I'm ready for serious outside investors. I'm ready to go beyond, I don't know, your mother, your father, whoever put up money. Friends and family, not to be, ready to go beyond friends and family, raise money. So when did you, what did, beyond needing it, what did you think you needed to be at, and what did you know you needed to be at? And then we can talk a little bit about what you looked for.
Sure. So Troy really brought up something that I think is important and a little bit idealized often in panels and in conversations around venture capital, that it's really a lot harder, and I think everyone up here recognizes this is a lot harder than it appears to outsiders that aren't doing it, or in retrospect, sometimes you kind of forget all the ebbs and flows and the different meetings and discussions you've had to get to that point. And it really starts with just the concept, do I even need to raise money right now? And why would I raise money? And I think a really good answer to that is you don't until you really need to. And so one of the reasons why you would need to is because you've reached a certain level, and for a company like mine that's a really heavy technology company where we had, I think, over 35 patents before we even went to the commercial market. So there's a lot of R&D behind it. We reached a point of technology validation that required additional capital in order to help us bring it to the market, because it's not something that you can bootstrap out with one salesperson. When you're dealing with rep networks and you're dealing with really large corporate entities, we needed a different amount of human capital, and that costs money. And we needed to hire engineers from Motorola, and that takes health benefits. You know, they're not coming to just eat ramen noodles and sleep on a cot on the floor when you're hiring people that have, 25 years of relevant experience in your industry. So for us, we grew to a certain level of technology validation in the wireless power field, which today seems like a no-brainer. But that's because Apple put it in their phones in the fall. 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, it seemed like, maybe we heard this before. Tesla did it in 1893. Why is 2015 the time, or 2016 the time? And one other thing from my perspective on the strategic element and the people element of raising capital, when you do get, what I've noticed is it's really hard to raise money until you start getting a couple people to jump in the pool. And then it becomes a lot easier, and you actually usually do end up with a little bit of decision-making. So it might not be, completely different investor groups, but you might have the last $1 million of your round, and you have 2 funds to pick from, that type of a scenario. And what, first of all, finding a good way to do diligence on investment funds is extraordinarily hard, and this is a plea to all entrepreneurs in the room that, believe me, if someone calls me to ask about Molex, I'll say great things, and I believe them, but it would be hard for me to say anything negative if I wanted to, because they're an investor. I can't give you, as an entrepreneur, really honest feedback. The only people I can give you feedback on are people that I don't really know, so what's the value? So you need to entrepreneurs need to work together, find entrepreneurs that have exited companies, that have been a part of successes, have been part of failures. One of the best references I ever had on a VC, and it worked out really well, was the CEO that got fired by the VC. So it was a founder CEO that got fired by the VC, and so I'm like, oh, here we go. They're going to have all sorts of bad stuff to say about this VC, and they're like, no. They just wanted to take it kind of in an incremental step, and I wanted to keep going big, and we weren't aligned anymore. It was time for me to leave and them to bring in a different type of operator. Here's all the good things I'll say about them. Here's the things you should know. So banding together entrepreneurs, because VC funds all know each other. They all talk, and we talk to them too, but entrepreneurs need to have their own network and be honest and help each other. It's not competing for the same amount. It's not competing for the same pool of capital. It's sharing with each other real insight that can help grow. So that's a plea I have for entrepreneurs on this side of the thinking about people equation.
That is important. Everybody remember that. We'll form a club afterwards. We'll circulate a group cabal.
Comment there.
Sure.
I always offer up entrepreneurs that we've invested in to entrepreneurs that we're thinking about investing in as a reference. Both. And
But he's probably right, Karen. If they're a current portfolio, it's sort of hard to bite the hand that feeds you, isn't it?
I don't think so. Because look, I was at a meeting once, and that was a conference. I knew this guy, and he turned to me and said, oh, you're at GE Ventures these days. And then he said, oh, you guys got a guy over there, he's terrible. And I was like, holy shit. He's not there anymore, but he was, he's not there anymore. But no, I think folks will say, they add value, they didn't add value, I thought they could get this, I didn't really get that. And at the end of the day, it's not even GE Ventures, it's actually Kerr. It's, it's Lisa Sunan who heads our healthcare practice. It really is the individual, and I think that's actually even true at like a Kleiner, right? Which partner is it? And this is such a reputation business. People need to be super careful with their reputations, and those who aren't don't survive. I have a question for you, though. Can I ask a question?
By all means. Hard one. Make them blush.
So, and this. why corporate? Because a lot of entrepreneurs are like, you know, I don't want the corporate money, and I definitely don't want the corporate money in a Series A. We'll put them in the B when the price goes up, because they're valuation insensitive. But they're not. We're not. I'm not valuation insensitive.
So this is like an open door look at the conversation we'd be having in closed doors. I think maybe we had this conversation 2 years ago, Karen. And they didn't invest. Can you believe that? No.
She's saving herself right now.
I am. Well, you know,
We'll see how I do this one.
price to go up.
There you go. So the rule of thumb that I think you get from a lot of financial investors, and you get a lot from a lot of experienced entrepreneurs, is don't bring in strategic investment in your early rounds. And in fact, I find that a lot of the West Coast funds are pretty, they kind of have rules. Like, we're not going to get maybe like a Kleiner Perkins or a Sequoia. They may not get into a round where there's strategics involved. And I think the general fear, I'm talking about the generalization right now, is that the corporates have a strategy and a perspective that's not financially driven for the benefit of the company. It's financially driven for the benefit of the mother company, so GE or Molex instead of NuCurrent in this case was the example. I don't find that to be the exact case, but I think that's the rule of thumb, and maybe Troy can speak to that a little bit more. One of the biggest reasons we went with strategic money early in our first round, and I wanted to bring this up, and I'm glad you asked, because I forgot. In our space, wireless power, in hardware, and I'm assuming there's a lot of hardware companies in here, Chicago is not a bastion of hardware investing. If you want to invest with local VCs, if you want to have a Midwest investment round, a lot of the funds might be interested. Troy's fund's extremely disciplined. I think every time I talk to Troy says, love your company, we don't invest in companies like you. But love talking to you. So, you know, Troy's fund is very disciplined, but there's a lot of funds that'll take a look, but they don't have the ability to do the diligence, and they recognize that very quickly. And so in the case of our Series A, Molex did a lot for us, and one of the most valuable things they did for us was put together a team of PhDs and experts. They do power connectors. They have a vested interest in understanding wireless power, aka connecting without connectors. And they put a team together and really kicked the tires, reviewed all the intellectual property, tore down our simulations and models, looked at our hardware, tried to build their own, see if theirs is as good as ours. And lo and behold, once Molex said, this is good, we're interested, now all of a sudden the Midwest financial investor said, yeah, we like our part of the equation. We understand the business model. We understand the team. We can do that. But now that a real bona fide technologist or technology team has blessed this technology, now we can get involved. So that was the biggest reason. There were other reasons, but that was one of the biggest reasons we brought a strategic in early to help with the diligence and qualification.
So for physical products, let's turn to that with what we got left. Is outside validation uniquely important? Do you think that sort of is unique to the physical product realm? Because I want to talk a little bit about, most of these people here, physical products is what we're trying to do here at mHUB. It's why it exists. What's unique about it? What's different about it? It's equally important to understand why you don't do it. Outside validation, further thoughts on it. Let's start with the validation question. Is that critical? Do you have to have it?
I'll do my quick part and then let the others say their part, which is going to be smarter. My perspective is that it's just not, it's out of trend. Investing in hardware is out of trend for some good reasons. Like, it's a lot less capital intensive to get real high-level validation and traction in software. And so what that means is you have real hardcore technologists in corporate roles, Intel Ventures, GE Ventures, Molex Ventures. They have the hardcore technologists that understand silicon, they understand manufacturing, and the type of operations that go into that. You know, we talked to NEA, for example, huge fund. They have a partner that still focuses on silicon investing, and they have other unit force, exactly. And they have dozens of partners that focus on other investments. And so I think that's the uniqueness. It's just that it's not that it's any easier to do diligence in other businesses. It's just that funds are set up to do that now, whereas they're not as interested in harder technologies. That's my perspective.
I'm going to add to that because, yes, hardware is on the surface what you see, but I would say when we also look at NuCurrent, we also looked at what are some proprietary ways that you do simulation that enables you to produce a prototype much faster. And to us, that's a software and hardware combination. And I would say a lot of the examples that I've seen here at mHUB is a combination of hardware and software. And to some degree, the software is what actually differentiate you and also gives you that protection so that you do not become commoditized. Because I think what happened with auto connectivity with Apple and Samsung, what they've done is they have commoditized the hardware elements of it. It is very easy if you are just producing a hardware for somebody else to just produce very similar hardware but in a round shape versus a square shape, right? So you have to bring that something extra that gives you that audience of the customer, and I think software is a differentiator. So while we say that, yeah, mHUB, it's hardware, I don't think you can really separate the two. I think the two goes together in order to differentiate themselves, so.
So one of the things that people think that's a misnomer is they think about VCs as being huge risk takers. And the reality is that the good ones are good at mitigating risk in an inherently risky environment. And this is really risky. And so the reason that we don't do hardware is that we don't have the expertise. We couldn't have put his equipment on a bench, validated, understood it, and mitigated that risk of the equation. We can't, if he has manufacturing problems, go and say, oh, that's an antenna problem. I know that the radius of the curve was too small and too tough. We don't have any of that expertise in-house. So we would be taking on more risk by betting on something that we didn't know. And because our job is to mitigate risk, we tend to stay, and thank you for commenting how disciplined we are, but we do stay in our narrow lane, we try to, and stay in our narrow lane and work with stuff that we really know. So from the entrepreneur side, on the other, looking in, that means that you want to try to get in front of people who know your business well for two reasons. One is they'll be able to add value, the football team stuff we talked about, because they've done it, they've been there, they can help you. But second is they're more likely to get to a quick yes or a quick no and to be able to say yes because they understand the risks that are involved. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, I don't think obviously we don't invest in anything that's going to violate the laws of physics. We understand that. Usually it's really more about the market in any event. I just think actually the prior panel was talking about digital manufacturing and how that's actually helping to reduce the upfront costs of the hardware. So in fact, I think it's actually becoming less risky to do it today and to get a product in a customer's hand and have them be able to test it. So for that reason, I'm pretty optimistic about where hardware investing can go. But I'm surprised you weren't worried that Molex would re-engineer your product and steal it. But I know that Molex would never do that, but don't you get that one all the time?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, you're going to steal our product and you're the big company that's going to just come in and swoop.
So how do you protect yourself, Jacob? Or didn't you? He's about to go back to the office and found out Molex just introduced the
The name on the banner's changed. You definitely worry about it. You worry about when you partner with large companies, if they're channel partners, you worry about it when they're your investment partners. And I personally worried about it too much. And I learned that now. And part of the reason why I know that now is because now we've worked with dozens of large multi-billion-dollar companies. And first of all, most people, especially at those types of companies, really are well-intentioned. You know what their intentions are. Their intentions are to do well for their company, but they're not they're not out to hurt you. So basically, you have to protect from the inadvertent aspects of it. And secondly, my experience with a lot of companies is it's really, as a startup with 15, 20, 30 people, the pace at which you change things and move your product direction and technology direction around, it's really hard for large entities to keep up with that. And so if they had any intention to really take something and bring it to the market on their own, if I have one revelation, it's that they need us a lot more than I ever expected. Then it's sometimes entrepreneurs value the idea or the core technology way too much. You know, it's like 1% of the fight. And they say, oh, if I tell GE my technology idea, they'll just build it. Actually, GE probably wants you to take it as far as you can and some more, and they want to do what they're really good at doing.
Meetings, we won't have time.
Yeah, a lot. Yeah, for a variety of reasons, and good reasons, because they have also quality control ideas that are so important that they're not willing to, they can't take the same risks that startups can take. So you move quicker.
Yeah, and fundamentally, if the only thing that you have that's defensible about your business is the idea, at some point, you're going to have to reveal what that idea is in order to try to sell it, and now you're not defensible. The defensible part is 95% execution. It's execution, execution, execution. And the idea is really low single digits. You get far more value out of sharing your idea, getting feedback, understanding the market, understanding how to sell it, understanding how to position it, getting the product market fit, than the risk associated with someone may take my idea.
So that actually raises one more thing that I think it's worth our batting around a bit before we turn to questions, because hopefully this has sparked questions in your mind about things you want to know. But it does beg the question, physical products are different. We've all said that. It's different from an investing environment. It's different from a process environment. It's different from degree of difficulty. What, from each of your perspectives, can someone do to reduce that barrier to an investor saying, yeah, this is what I want to do? What should an entrepreneur be doing to reduce the barrier? What have you learned, Jacob, in terms of dealing with the investment community to sort of de-risk what they perceive in the physical product environment? Physical products have their own unique characteristics. Kerr's probably right. We're in a different manufacturing environment than we might have been in 10 years ago, so some of that is taken out. You don't have a line you have to build or something. Maybe you can do it digitally. But just give us some thoughts on that before we open it up, if you would. You want to start?
I can. So first and foremost is stay in our lane too. I mean, if 90% of venture funds don't invest in this right now, we know who the 10% are that we should go for. And so that makes it pretty straightforward right there. So that's one thing. But there are things that, Karen brought up something I think so important. The manufacturing landscape is changing so much. The amount of companies that have captive, vertically integrated manufacturing is so small now. Apple doesn't build their own phones either. Contract manufacturing has opened up a whole different type of business model that means you don't need $20 million of venture capital to get your first chip out the door, because you're not going to build your own chips anyways, because most chip companies don't build their own chips. And I'm talking about Broadcom, I'm talking about Qualcomm. They go to manufacturers that keep state-of-the-art equipment, do the training for the employees, have operational excellence in manufacturing. So, we're understanding that you can have leaner business models in hardware is another way to, I guess, de-risk the huge capital expense that goes into starting a physical company. And mHUB is a great example of, just in the past year. Now there's a new 66,000 square foot rapid manufacturing hub here that reduces our burden a few $100,000 of capital equipment that we would want to put into our own lab, and now we pay $1,000 a month from the members. So that's one thing.
Yeah, and I would say the overall hardware investment landscape, it's actually more often we're seeing companies that already are past proof of concept type of stage whenever they come to us. And I think because of what Karen was saying with 3D printing and all the technology that are happening, contract manufacturer availability, much cheaper prototyping technologies available, I don't think the risk is there today compared to 10 years ago. I think 10 years ago, yes, people are not up about funding for your development. They're about funding for your scale, your growth, and therefore it's harder to get money. But I think right now, a lot of the entrepreneurs, at least when they come to see us, I feel like they're in that stage that they're trying to really scale, and they see the fact that, hey, working with you, I get the channel access, or I have the manufacturing capacity by leveraging what you guys have. This is what we bring to the table now for them. So I think, I would say it's like in general, like just this market is de-risking itself, you know.
Hopefully we'll continue to. We've got a bunch of questions that have come up, so let's start going through them and see what we can answer in people's minds. So some process questions first. What's a typical time frame someone should expect from introduction to funding? What's the quickest you've ever seen? What speeds it up? What slows it down? You want to start with that?
Yeah, so I ran Techstars for 7 years, and over that, those cohorts, what we saw was, and it was early stage, so people doing seed, some Series A. Generally, from the time they start pitching till the money's in the bank and it's done, you have to count on it's going to take 6 months. So sometimes it's done faster, but it is a process, and you learn along the way. It is a sales process. You have a sales funnel. You treat it like a sales process. It's like enterprise sales. And think about enterprise sales cycles. 6 months actually would be pretty good. You know, have I seen it where someone has a meeting, has a second meeting that week, has a third, gets a term sheet in, you know, a week and a half, 2 weeks, and they close 30 or 45 days later? Yeah, but literally 2 months from the first meeting to close would be ridiculously fast.
Whoever asked that question, Guy Turner from Hyde Park Venture Partners, if you just go to his Twitter from like the past month, he wrote a great article on building your fundraising pipeline. So you can use it as a Bible for the answer to that question.
When entrepreneurs come to me and they tell me, hey, we're closing in a week or we're closing in 2 weeks, can you make that? And I just met them, I'm like, nope, not at all. I mean, you know, corporates have a bad rep of taking longer, but, because you do have more socialization.
We can't make that either.
But nobody can make that.
And I'm an angel, and I wouldn't make that, so,
You know, you still have to do diligence. There's no way you can even do any diligence in a week. So I would say if we're serious about it, it's 3 months, but some of them have taken longer. And I try to be responsive, though.
I think it depends on how well we know the area. I would say, I think when we work with Jacob, I think on the wireless power, because it is a little bit closer to our core, so it was it was like 3 months, somewhere around there, 3 months. And then, but with some of the a little bit more out there adjacency, requires us to maybe pull a few more experts that are within our contact list. That is probably closer to a 6 months process. And whenever I do have somebody who tells me that I'm closing within 4 to 6 weeks, I'll tell you that, no, I can't. Like, at the most I can do is, maybe if you have a bridge round that is coming up, we can probably think about participating in that. And I always tell the entrepreneur, like, if you're already starting right now, you should open up the data room for us to do early due diligence, because we will take longer, just because you have your lead investor. Like, normally they try to get the lead investor in first, and they try to get everybody else. I said, when you start opening that up for your lead investor, open that up for us. If you have intention of including us, then I can get a lot of that front-end battle finished.
So another question, which the question asks is, what advice for early stage companies that aren't revenue generating, who need cash flow to get to market? I think, take that as the broader paradox of, when you really need money, it's the hardest time to get it. And if you sort of don't need it, a little easier. How do people deal with that? And what advice do you have as to sort of what they need to see if they're not revenue generating in particular?
So if there were markers, I draw on the whiteboard, I have a graph that, follow me if you can, that you get the vertical axis is perceived value and the horizontal axis is time. And you get an idea and you're like, wow, this is amazing, it's awesome, it's great. And then you start to execute and you kind of fall down, oh, this shit is really hard, right? And hopefully you get through that valley of despair and then you go up and to the right and hopefully it's really valuable. So if you can picture that shape, the easiest place to raise money is on the upswing, right? So you're going to raise money on the idea, and you're going to raise money when you start executing and get traction on the execution. So if you're pre-revenue and you're still in the exciting idea phase, my biggest suggestion to you is raise money before you start to try to sell, because it's going to get harder, right? So you want to be on that anticipation of excitement, or you want to be on the other side. It's generally hard to raise when you're starting to execute, you're not hitting the numbers you put in your plan. It feels like, because you don't know if that's going to be a dive bomb that's going to hit the ground, or you're going to pull it out and come out. So it's okay, a lot of companies raise money pre-revenue. It's actually easier than when there's some little revenue to do it pre-revenue.
It's never too early to start doing business development, quite frankly, and particularly with some of these hardware products. If you can get partnerships or people to commit to demoing the product or in advance, I think that goes a long way, because the real issue is, do you have something that's going to meet a market need, and is somebody interested in that? And if you can demonstrate that at least there's some set of people who would have some interest, then I think that makes it easier.
Okay, so here's a fun one from those who think they can change. I have an adage which people don't change, but what is the hardest skill set you can find? What's the hardest thing for you to find? If you go, and it's particularly probably for the investing side of the world, although maybe it's relevant for an entrepreneur in terms of who you're looking for, but what's the hardest skill set to find? And I guess that's asked by somebody who thinks they can remake themselves, but let's be optimistic they can.
So as an entrepreneur, there are two very distinct phases, discovery and delivery, and I'm stealing this from Steve Blank. So discovery is the early stage, figure out if you have product market fit, do a lot of duct tape, bubble gum, lean startup, all that stuff. Delivery is, I've got a product, it's working, I have to incrementally improve and make that assembly line work better and better and build a big company. I think it's very unusual to find someone who is good at both. So it was eye-opening to me when I was running Sure Payroll and we got to 80 people, and I realized I'm not so good at 80 people. I'm really good at 8. I'll go head-to-head with anybody early stage. I love that stage. But managers reporting to me about the people they manage, that's not my thing. That's not where I excel. I am a discovery person. I'm not a delivery person. Michael Alter, who took over after me, he's a great delivery person. Harvard MBA, McKinsey operations practice, he's really great at the late stage. But it's very unusual. There are a few, we can name them, right? So Phil Knight or Bill Gates or Michael Dell, they're in the news. They're in the news for a reason. That's unusual. Right? Out of the, 26 million companies in the United States, we can probably name a handful that have gone from early stage discovery through public IPO delivery.
Go ahead. I think for the ones that are founders, sometimes as the company scales, so resonating with you, knowing when to back off and let somebody else to take the company to scale. Because I think sometimes it's really hard, and you have that control over the company, the idea, what it's supposed to be. You have pivoted a few times and made it successful, but the hardest realization is that the company at the stage where it's at, you're probably not the best for them to go to that next leap. And I think that's probably hard to find.
I actually just echo something that Troy said earlier, which is really this is about teams and putting people in the best position. So I wouldn't even try to think you need to do all of it. You really need to have a good team. If I look at our portfolio, broadly speaking, we have over-indexed maybe on engineering and technical talent. We're really good at that because we can assess it wonderfully. And then I think on the sales and the customer support is usually where the companies tend to struggle and where we need to augment the teams.
You've over-indexed on sales because we're about customer acquisition.
There might be something here. We'll talk later. Jacob, to Troy's point, if all you're doing is protecting an idea you won't last, why do you need 35 patents? Sorry, somebody asked it.
Hey, it's a fair question.
Patents aren't free.
You need way more than just 35, though. You need more than patents too. So I'll have a different conversation someday. In fact, I've done a seminar here on intellectual property, and intellectual property is a heck of a lot more than patents. That's just one piece of about a 4-piece puzzle. But if it's more than an idea, why do you need them? It depends on your market space. There are some market spaces where you don't need patents. Keep everything as a trade secret, bury it behind some binary, and you don't need it. It really depends on your market space and the business strategy you have in your market space. The way that we use our patents is different than the way that Molex would use their patents. And you just have to have a plan. And our plan revolved around, we were a very small company, one-person company, and that wasn't me. I was doing a different job, and we hired a PhD electrical engineer. That was our person. And he came up with a breakthrough technology in a medical device that our only way to survive was to create some asset out of that we could then talk to Medtronic or Boston Scientific or St. Jude, which turned into broadening into consumer, where we're then talking to Samsung and Apple and Motorola. And in our space, in both the electronic space and in the medical device space, patents are absolutely valued. They're essential in those spaces. But there's other spaces where, they're just not that important. I'm thinking your companies, Troy, probably don't have a ton of money spent on patents.
No, so we have 31 investments that we've made, and one company has a hardware component, and they're the only company, and they have one patent. No, none of the other 30 have any patents.
And one more thing I'll say to that, one patent is don't spend the money, unless you're just saying...
They're on their way.
Yeah, unless you're saying you have one patent. Like, if you say we're going to be a company that has patents, you're going to be getting into double digits before you have anything that's really assertable or defensible, and those are two different concepts. But one patent, it can be destroyed, and with anyone that has the intention of doing it. So you need to have a strategy, you need to have it well reinforced, and so if you're going to do it, it's an investment, and you need to have a portfolio mentality to it.
Yeah, one of the biggest successes in Chicago in recent years was CleverSafe, and Chris Gladwin always said that they had more patents per employee than any other company in the country.
Except the one year in 2015 where Cranes ran the article, and we had 250 patents per employee, and CleverSafe had 56. The problem is they sold for $1.4 billion that year, and we didn't. So.
Damn, there you go.
Chris still wins that one.
Chicago lags in investment in hardware and product development. I'm not sure we lag anybody else, but I think the world lags that. But it does beg a question. We don't have a lot of locally based capital that is focused on that. Any thoughts on how either individual companies or as a community together we can encourage more national focus on local investment in products, physical products? Sorry, it got asked. You're all looking at me like, don't ask.
There's a part of the premise that I'm going to refute a little bit.
Okay.
Which is, I think in Chicago and the U.S. there is a little bit of a dearth of investing in hardware technology. That's not the case in China. There's a mass of investment in China into filling up the manufacturing plants that they're so good at. So how do we bring that local, I think is the next question. At least my belief is that it's huge in China right now. How do we bring that local? I think you just think like a global company. The ability to get on a plane and go to China or to go to Japan or to go to Korea where they are making investments like this, that's not hard anymore. It's not hard to communicate, and you just have to think globally. The world's shrinking rapidly, and you can work with those companies. And Karen earlier said all money's green. Well, not one. There's a pink and blue, and some of them are green. But and there's actually a lot of foreign investment that wants to get involved. You have to be a little bit thoughtful about what that looks like, though.
Couldn't agree more. Jacob is not the person we're going to put on to support tariffs, is my guess. So we won't even go there based on what you said. Okay, what role role should an investor play? This says VCs play, but let's make it investors play in strategic decision-making processes of a startup. What do you let's start with what do you expect as an investor, what role you want to play, and then Jacob, how painful is that?
So at the end of the day, we're betting on the entrepreneur. And I believe that you back the entrepreneur, you support the entrepreneur until you don't. And so, I had this conversation this week with someone, so they're
Focus on it until you don't.
until you don't. Yeah, and you as a board are backing that CEO and backing that entrepreneur unless they're doing something and it's time to change horses. But you don't, I think it's a huge mistake to try to micromanage the process. It's a huge mistake to do anything more than give your opinion when asked and to try to guide them and coach them. And so we have an entrepreneur now who's got a great company, they got to cash flow positive, they're deciding do we continue on this trajectory where we are now, or do we go raise a chunk of money and go for the next plateau? I'd rather he go for the next plateau. It'll be a bigger return for us. I think the risk reward is justified, but at the end of the day, it's his call, because does he have the energy, the passion, I can't make that happen in a CEO. I have another CEO, and she's raising a round now and can't wait to raise her next round and is shooting for the moon, and, she might be shooting too high. I don't know, but it's her call. We're backing her. And so I believe that as a board, as an investor, you've picked your horse, you back that horse until you don't.
I think a board is there to actually help on strategy, quite frankly. I don't think they can manage. You can't micromanage, but...
We give a lot of feedback. We're there as to help, but not to
We
make
see a lot of
decisions.
companies, we're in these industries, we have a sense of where these markets are going, and I think it's responsible for us to provide that input into the strategic thinking.
But at the end of the day, it's the CEO's call.
At the end of the day, the management does make that call. On the one hand, on the other hand, the budgets are approved by the board, and that is how, strategy gets implemented on a tactical level.
Constraints lead to creative problem solving.
On the ambiguity that is inherent in these two people, that's money, folks. You learned a lot. I hope everybody took this down verbatim. Go back and study it. You should have learned a lot today, but thank you to all of our panelists for showing up, helping mHUB, and helping the community.